Hey everybody, Brian here with Way Follower Fellowship, and I'm out here driving for Uber, doing Uber Eats, making a little extra money, and I'm listening to some stuff on the radio, some commentary, and some stuff like that, and it dawned on me, listening into the people talking about Jesus and theology and Christianity, and I just got this, this feeling that I wanted to share with y'all that there's a resurgence happening, right? We've had so much in the past few years, so much stuff in the past few years that has been aimed at demoralizing and breaking down and attacking Christianity and attacking Christians and attacking people who follow Jesus, followers of the way. And it's been hard. It's been hard, to see it all the time on the news and the TV, in the classrooms, in the companies, in the politicians that are supposed to represent, the people that elect them. We just see it all over the place. There's an all-out attack. But He's not sitting idly by. The Holy Spirit, Ruach HaKodesh, is not sitting by and just letting it happen. There's a powerful movement. Just like when Michael Jackson came forward and talked about his Christianity and had a preacher and worship leaders come up in one of his concerts. We're seeing it today. We're seeing him fight back. We're seeing our champion. We're seeing him step up. He's stepping up. He's fighting back. We're seeing people like Kanye talk about Jesus. We got people like Chance the Rapper talking about Jesus. We got Justin Bieber. How much of a train wreck was he? He was arrested. He was getting in fights. He was doing drugs. And look at him now. He's standing. He's standing in front of crowds. And he's preaching. And he's telling people about Jesus. He just brought Judah Smith out on stage to preach the gospel at a secular event, at a secular festival. God is not silent. We need to be ready. I'm not saying we need to go out and browbeat and Bible thump, but we need to be ready. We need to be ready to answer for the hope that is found in us. We need to live out the life. We need to Matthew 25 all over this place. We need to live out the life as though Jesus is coming tomorrow. We need to act it out. We need to believe it. And we need to preach the word, preach the gospel every single day. And only when necessary do we use words. There are plenty of people out there using words. Plenty of people out there who have the gift of gab. But, Christians on the front lines, the holy soldiers that are called to be his infantry, to be his artillery. It's action. There are some that are called to be, there are some that are called to be, the ones who get out in front and are talking about it, talking about this whole thing, and to give people some motivation to dig deeper, to get into the churches. But what do we do when they come to the church? What do we do? We have to act. We have to welcome. We have to accept. We have to understand. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be easy. Jesus talks about we have to be reborn. He was talking with Nicodemus. And again, this is all paraphrase, but he talks with Nicodemus, and Nicodemus says to Jesus, how is it that a man can be born again? Does he go back into his mother's womb? And Jesus was like, no, of course not. I'm talking about being born again in the Spirit. But the parallel isn't used flippantly. I don't think Jesus used that analogy in a flippant way. I think he knew exactly what he was saying. Birth is messy. Birth is bloody. Birth, sweat and tears. There's pain. There's frustration. Sometimes there's complications. Some births take longer than others. Some Christians come to the faith in a very easy birth. Some, it's they believe and boom, they're out. Very little pain, very little struggle, very little effort. And then others, they come to Christ and it takes 20, 30, more than 30 for my case, years to finally come to that point, to be reborn. It can be a long and arduous process, and we can't turn our backs on people who are hungry for the word. They're going to come and they're going to ask questions, and they're going to struggle, and they're going to fight, and they're going to want to turn away, and they're going to want to give up, and they're going to sometimes turn back to sin, and they're going to turn back to those things that distance them from God. And we have to still love them because we're on the front lines. We're there in the trenches. We're not Justin Bieber. We're not Kanye. We're not Chance the Rapper. We're not them. That may not be our platform. That may not be our calling. Our calling could very well be that in our entirety of our life, that these two things are sum up all of the law, is that to love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. And the second one is like it, just like Jesus said when he talked to the Sadducees, to love your neighbor as yourself. The entirety of the law is summed up in those two laws. If you can do those two things, then you can live within God's grace, and we're already living within His grace. I misspoke there. You can live within God's will, right? So, we see a brother or sister struggling, and sometimes it's easy, especially if we're at a distance, right? We're at a distance. We're not connected to that particular brother or sister, and we see them do something foolish. We see them act out, right? We see them do a little bit of some rebellion, and they do something against God's will, and it's blatant and it's obvious. And all of a sudden, we are like the crabs on a beach, and we're just pulling them right back in. The crabs on the beach, they're in this. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but they're in this pit. Crabs on a beach, they'll find themselves after, the tides and stuff inside this pit, from the loose sand. And as one is, struggling to get out, other ones are grasping and trying to pull them back in, pull them back down. When somebody's coming out of sin, when somebody's coming out of sin, that's what's happening to them, right? The others that are around them, the people involved in their lives, certain spirits even, are there in the pit, pulling them back, trying to just draw them back in deep. We have to be on the outside of the pit, offering our hand. We have to be that crab out there, putting our pincher out there, saying, "I've got you. I can help you. Please come with me." Not out of anger. We don't kick them back in. We don't kick them back in the pit. We reach out. We seek them. There's so much to this. Yes, there's correction in the Bible. Yes, there are things that we need to do to keep brothers and sisters in the faith. And there's steps that are lined out. And I'll talk about that in a future video. But it's not out of anger. And we don't just turn our backs immediately. We reach out, right? And if you're not in proximity to reach out, you pray. You don't get on the internet and talk trash. You don't get in their comments or in their DMs and just call them out on stuff. You pray for them, right? You pray for them, and you don't even need to tell them you're praying for them. right? What kind of self-aggrandizing is that? If you go into their DMs, you go in their comments, say, hey, brother, I'm praying for you. What are you doing? Why? I mean, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm not saying that you're doing something wrong. I don't know your heart, but I'm asking you to ask yourself. I'm asking you to ask yourself that question. Why? Why are you saying that? Are you saying that because you want to let him know that you're praying for him because it makes you feel better? Are you being led by the Spirit to let him know? Is there something that the Spirit is supposed to communicate to him or her by you letting that person know that? Or is it for your own ego? I've been guilty of that. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I haven't done it. I have. I've done it. Maybe not necessarily in a DM or a comment, but I've done it. You know, I've had that spirit of pride and ego, and it's not helpful. You know, Jesus talks about, you know, it's better to go into your room and shut the door and draw the blinds, draw the curtains, and pray in secret, because that is not self-aggrandizing. That's out of true connection and true concern and true, reverence. And so, if you feel led to pray for somebody, pray for them. But you don't have to go around talking about it. That's so that God's will can be done. And I know that not everybody does that, and I'm grateful for those who don't. I'm grateful for those who already understand that and who already understand this. But I guess the point of me making this video, and I guess the point, I kind of deviated a little bit, but the point of this video is be ready. With Justin Bieber and Kanye, Chance the Rapper, all these different people coming out, talking about Jesus, talking about God, talking about how their lives are changed, people are going to start wondering. People are going to start looking. They're going to start coming to you. They're going to start asking questions, and you're going to be under attack. The other night when I came home, when I was on my way home from Celebrate Recovery, this past Thursday, I stopped in to Walmart to pick something up. It was just a random thought to go in and grab this item, kind of for my YouTube channel. It was one of those ring light stand things. To help with the lighting, because I don't know if you've noticed, but in that corner of my where I'm doing my YouTubes, it's kind of dark, so I needed some better lighting, so I went and got a little LED ring light thing. It was just a random thought that, hey, I need to go pick this up, and so I went in there and I went to pick it up, and I don't think this was a coincidence. I don't. I mean, it might have been. It might have just been pure happenstance, or pure, just chance encounter. But I almost literally, as I was going into the electronics section, I was passing through. They have those TVs in the aisle. And so there was a space between them. And I was walking. I was taking my cart. I had my little son, my youngest, with me, and we were just chit chatting and playing, and we were going through. And I wasn't really paying attention to what was going on around me. And I look up, and I almost smacked into these two gentlemen. I almost smacked into their cart, right? And one of the guy was on the phone. One of the gentlemen was on the phone. And he quickly got off his phone, and I was just kind of like telling him, "It's all right, cool, man. You're good. Keep going." I'm sorry. I wasn't paying attention. Saying, you have the right of way. Go ahead. Well, he pulled his cart, like he was just at the edge, so we almost collided. So he wasn't in front of me at that moment. He goes to push his cart. He pushes his cart. I'm thinking, him and his buddy are gonna just keep pushing past, and he stops. He stops dead in front of me, like his cart. So I can't move forward, right? I can't move forward without hitting his cart. And he stops, and he says, and he kind of stutter steps, and then he kind of moves forward a little bit, and him and his friend are looking at me. And then he kind of moves forward, and as I'm kind of starting to go around him, he goes, "Hey, I had a question." This gentleman said that to me. "Hey, I have a question." And he asked me if I had heard of his particular denomination. And I'm not going to say which denomination it was. That's not the point of the story. but it is a denomination that most of us in Christianity would know is not very biblical in their understanding of Jesus Christ and in the way that they shepherd their flock and all these different things. So he asked me if I'd heard of them, and I said yes. I'm aware of that denomination. And he starts pulling out Bible verses. Of course, he has them individual, right? Individual Bible. He's not looking at passages. He's not talking about chapters. He's not talking about books. He's taking out individual verses. And as he starts to talk to me about these things, I'm like, okay, I'll listen to him. I'll hear him out. Let's see what he has to say, and then I'll speak as well. And so I'm listening to him try to talk about these verses, and he it becomes an inquisition. He starts asking me questions and about this verse and all these different things. And so I'm saying, well, first, you have this verse in front of me. Which verse is it? Where is it located? What is it? And he tells me what it is. I was like, all right, well, let me pull out my app. So I pull out my Blue Letter Bible app, and currently it's set on the translation for LSB. That's a new translation, about a couple years old, and I think it's a really good translation. One of the top translations, right up there with NIV, NASB, and New King James. Like, it's right up there. Probably, in my personal opinion, probably a little better. Nothing wrong with using those translations. Don't get me wrong. If that's your preferred, ESV, preferred translation, those are good. It's just my personal preference is LSB, and so I pull it up, and I'm pulling up the passage. I'm not going to read the whole chapter because we're in the middle of Walmart. But I pull up the passage, and I'm starting to read through the entire passage, and I'm reading it out loud, which he's visibly getting uncomfortable about. But I'm reading it out loud so that all three of us can have this context of this verse. And so when I get through, and I go through the verse that he talks about, and I continue to the end of that passage, and then I explain to him the passage, and I explain to him the context of that verse, and this, that, and the other, and he can't really go from there. So he goes on to another verse. And I was like, all right, well, which verse is that one? So I looked that one up, go through the passage, and again, talking to him about putting it in context. This is what was meant in this context, literary devices, different things, and all that stuff. And so we do this about 3 or 4 times. He's sitting there, and he's giving me all these different versions of his interpretation or his church's interpretation of these verses. And I'm just looking at him. I'm like, man, you're taking these things and you're twisting the scripture. You're not looking at it. I was like, he asked me, he goes, why do you keep reading passages? He's starting to get a little frustrated with me. Why are you reading them in the passages? And I said, because we have to return the verse to its context before we can fully understand what is being said. You take a verse out and you don't have the context around it. That's how, Christians, over time have misconstrued and twisted scripture for their own means. So we can't do that in this conversation if we want to have an honest discussion. He's like, well, don't you know what the context is? And at that point, I felt like he was trying to call me out on my knowledge in the Bible. And I don't know everything about the Bible, and I'm still learning so much. But I looked at him and I was like, he's trying to insult me. He's trying to anger me. He's trying to make me feel like, that I'm dumb or something along those lines. And I looked at him and I was like, you know what? We're not going to continue this conversation. This conversation is over. You're twisting scriptures. You're turning them into things that they are not. You are twisting the words of the Lord and perverting them. And this clearly I'm not going to change your mind. Clearly you're not going to change mine. There's nothing to be gained in this conversation. And so we're done. This conversation's over. And as I'm walking away, he goes, why? You scared? I'm scared. I looked at him and I was like, no, I'm tired of you twisting the scriptures. I'm tired of you disrespecting God. So I'm done. And I walked away. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we literally almost ran into each other. I do think that was an attack. I don't think that it happens often. But here's the thing. Over the past 30 years, when I was living in the world, when I was doing worldly things and being a worldly person, I was never approached by people of these different denominations that go out and they do these things and that are twisting scriptures. Not once. So I think it's kind of funny I started this YouTube channel, and I'm trying to sanctify. I'm trying to be sanctified. And I have my accountability partners, and they're there, and they're helping me to stay accountable to the word. And they have my phone number. They know where I live. They see me weekly. We talk to each other all the time, and we text each other and all these things. And so I have that support now, and that structure in my life that I didn't have before. And I have people who can call me out on things, and so it helps me to continue to try to reach more and more for the Lord. I don't think it's a coincidence that I was confronted by these particular people. So be ready. That's all I'm saying. When you start living for the Lord, great things are going to happen. Amazing things, blessings that you never thought were going to be possible in your life. But that means the enemy's going to be mad. He's going to be pissed. And he's going to send things to try to stumble you. He's going to send things to try to trip you up. He's going to send things to try to mess you up. It's not going to be just him, though. You got to be able to discern between him and your own flesh, him and your own desires, him and your own, old man or old woman trying to come to the surface, because that's there too. I mean, there's two enemies we fight, right? We fight our old man, we fight our old sin nature, but we also fight from a spiritual perspective too. This war has two fronts. But our God is a God of the infinite. He can handle wars on two fronts. He can handle wars on any front. And he's doing it. So be ready. Be ready to have an answer for the hope found in you. Be ready for the attacks. Stay in prayer. Stay in the word. Seek guidance. Seek counsel. Seek accountability. Get into a local church if you're not. Find a good Bible-believing. I don't care, if you think Lutheran is good for you, or if you think that Methodist is what works for you, if you think that non-denominational, if you think Episcopalian or Pentecostal. I'm not worried about all that. What I'm worried about is, what do you believe? Who do you say Jesus is? And do you have a church that supports that theology, the foundational theology of Christianity? And do they help you? Do they hold you accountable? Are there people there that you can get with, that when you're struggling, or they see you struggling, have you given them permission to come to you and say, hey brother, hey sister, I'm seeing you struggle. I want to help you. I want to be there for you. I want to disciple for you. I want to disciple, and we come alongside you. I want to fight this battle with you. We called them in the military, we're battle buddies. I want to be your battle buddy. You're going into this battle, and you don't go alone. So, yeah, be ready. If you're going to live this life, if you're going to live for God, if you're going to live for Jesus, be ready on those two things. Be ready for the fight, and be ready to give an answer for the hope found in you. I love you. Go with Christ.